Chapter 10. The Danites. Danite meeting today, a great gathering of the brethren. After considerable preaching, as usual, and a vast expenditure of breath in expounding to the dupes, the high priesthood up in the middle of 11 men, and with their hands uplifted, administered the oath, and initiated them into the band of warriors, and sons of thunder. The whole band of warriors was organized into companies of 10s, 20s, 50s, 100s, etc. The whole were placed under the command of a brigadier general, with his under-officers, colonels, majors, etc., accompanied with a band of music. William Swartzel, Mormonism Exposed, pages 25 to 26. By 1838, Missouri became a hotbed of persecution for the Mormons. They were being burned, beaten, and buried, and their troubles were only increasing. They sought for help from local residents, from county and state officials, but with little success. From out of this chaos and calamity came the Danites. The exact date of the organization of the Danite band is not known, probably because it was just a gradual and mutual effort of the Mormons to protect themselves from mobbers and outlaws. It was in existence by the summer of 1838 when so many depredations against the Mormons were occurring. Mutual efforts for defense and cooperative projects for protection had existed from the first early plunderings by mobs. However, there is nothing illegal or immoral in individuals or citizens forming a means of self-defense against any destructive force, whether natural or human. Probably the most complete report we have on the Danite organization came from Sidney Rigdon, who claimed that he was not a member of that organization, and he probably wasn't, but evidence indicates that he was aware of it and probably sanctioned its activities. Rigdon wrote, "At this time things began to assume an alarming aspect both to the citizens of Daviess and Caldwell counties. Mobs were forming all around the country, declaring that they would drive the people out of the state. This made our appeals to the authorities more deeply solicitous as the danger increased, and very soon after this the mobs commenced their depredations, which was a general system of plunder, tearing down fences, exposing all within the field to destruction, and driving off every animal they could find. Some time previous to this, in consequence of the threatenings which were made by mobs, or those who were being formed into mobs, and the abuses committed by them on the person and property of the citizens, an association was formed, called the Danite Band. This, as far as I was acquainted with it, not being myself one of the number, neither was Joseph Smith, was for mutual protection against the bands that were forming, and threatened to be formed for the professed object of committing violence on the property and persons of the citizens of Daviess and Caldwell counties. They had certain signs and words by which they could know one another, either by day or night. They were bound to keep these signs and words secret, so that no other person or persons than themselves could know them. When any of these persons were assailed by any lawless band, he would make it known to others, who would flee to his relief at the risk of life. In this way they sought to defend each other's lives and property, but they were strictly enjoined not to touch any person, only those who were engaged in acts of violence against the persons or property of one of their own number, or one of those whose life and property they had bound themselves to defend. This organization was in existence when the mobs commenced their most violent attempts upon the citizens of the before-mentioned counties. The first attempt to organize this protective and defensive clan occurred in June of 1838 at Far West, Missouri. That effort was soon abandoned, but the second attempt was more successful a month later at Atonement. The term Danites indicated that an actual organization existed. It was soon revealed that it not only had a purpose and mission, but was a structure with leaders and officers. Some called it the Brothers of Gideon, or the Big Fan. Others knew it as the Daughters of Zion. Jared Carter was originally its commander and had a brother by the name of Gideon, which may have accounted for the first name. John Coyle wrote of it as the Big Fan, which had its connotation from the scripture that wheat must go through the fan to drive out the chaff. Samson of Ard, the founder of the society, usually called it by the name of the Daughters of Zion, which also was derived from the scriptures which read, "And thou, O tower of the flock, the stronghold of the daughter of Zion, unto thee shall it come, even the first dominion, the kingdom shall come to the daughter of Jerusalem. Be in pain, and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail. For now shalt thou go forth out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even to Babylon, there shalt thou be delivered, there the Lord shall redeem thee from the hand of thine enemies. Arise and thresh, O daughter of Zion, for I will make thine horn iron, and I will make thy hoofs brass, and thou shalt beat in pieces many people, and I will consecrate their gain unto the Lord, and their substance unto the Lord of the whole earth." Micah 4:8, 10, 13. The term Danites is the name by which it became best known, and it, too, was taken from the Bible. The The Danites were the children of one of the sons of Jacob, or of the tribe of Dan. In those days the tribe of the Danites sought them an inheritance to dwell in and a place where there is no want of anything that is in the earth. These were the children of Dan, who were 600 men appointed with their weapons of war, who established a city and named it Dan. See Judges 17 and 18. With the reorganizations that occurred, probably from the times that it had to be reactivated or new members recruited, the name probably changed with each stage of development. The principal objective of this organization was one of protection or defense, and if necessary to capture, overthrow and destroy the arms, plans, or movements of any forces that threatened the Mormon people. This was all to be done according to justification by the laws of the land, upon directives from the heads of the church. Although it was a physical force, a marshalling of arms, and was military in form, it was not an outlaw terror force, as many had painted it out to be. When Avard and Corrill apostatized, they said they were of the opinion, and I think, the organization was to drive dissenters out of the county. Avard's testimony in court clearly established that the major purpose of the Danite organization was to defend ourselves against mobs. Such marshalling of arms and men was not uncommon in the history of Mormonism, as demonstrated by the 210 armed men who went to Clay County to aid their brethren against attacking mobs, or the 500 men who went from Kirtland to Missouri, not to mention the Nauvoo Legion or the Mormon Battalion. General Alexander Doniphan told Joseph Smith to organize the Latter-day Saints in an effort to hold off the lawlessness of the Missouri Mobocrats. They were to represent a militia in Caldwell County under the direction of Lieutenant Colonel George M. Hinkle. Joseph understood the careful employ of such an action, and therefore was very careful in all their movements to act in strict accordance with the constitutional laws of the land. DHC 3162. Soon there were 100 men gathered in the public square far west, ready to march to Atonement. This sort of civilian militia and home guard was already organized in Daviess County. Lyman White described this order. The county having been settled, the governor issued an order for the organization of the county and of a regiment of militia, and an election being called for a colonel of said regiment. I was elected unanimously, receiving 236 votes in August 1837. We then organized with subaltern officers, according to the statutes of the state, and received legal and lawful commissions from Governor Boggs for the same. DHC 3440. White and Hinkle were officers for this militia, and each man held an official commission as colonel from Governor Lilburn W. Boggs, commander of all the state's troops. These groups were soon called the Armies or Israel by many of those who belonged to them. They were subdivided by small units of 10s and 50s. Samson of Ard got up some men to also form a militia with the same purpose as the Armies of Israel. There was nothing wrong with this home defense group, and it was the express wish of the governor of Missouri that they have this kind of force on this western frontier. Neither was there any objection from the presidency of the church. Avard was accomplishing much towards these objectives and gaining many members in this mutual protection society. There were other objectives besides just fending off mobs. They helped to rebuild homes, plant gardens, fight fires, ward off Indians, etc. The readiness and preparedness of each Danite was explained by Swartzel, who said, "Every Danite must hold himself in readiness at a moment's warning, by day or by night. Each one of you must be equipped with a gun, or a cowskin, or a pistol, etc. According to your different stations. Each one of you is to have on hand 1 pound of powder and 100 bullets." Mormonism Exposed, page 23. Avard's purposes in organizing the Danites were honorable in defending the saints and protecting their rights as citizens under the Constitution of the United States. However, as conditions became worse for the Mormons, the Danites grew in numbers and power. Then Avard saw a chance for personal aggrandizement by unscrupulous ends. Avard began to encounter some difficulty explaining why members of the first presidency of the church had not made appearances at his meetings. When they did come by, Peck said that Avard did not explain to the presidency what his teachings had been in that society. He does mention that they had been to Avard's, and that what they had done organizing and protecting the saints had been approved. It was his teachings and objectives that had turned his whole efforts into chaos and disrepute. The prophet explained that the purpose of the society and its name were originally for protection. The Danite system never had any official existence. It was a term made use of by some of the brethren in Far West, and grew out of an expression I made use of when the brethren were preparing to defend themselves from the Missouri mob, in reference to the stealing of DHC 6165. Avard probably saw an advantage or opportunity to use the name and the objective of defense to establish such a clan, even though Joseph Smith did not know of it until much later. The Danite band was supposed to have a constitution which was also secret and supposedly read in the home of Sidney Rigdon, and approved by all who were to participate in that organization. Avard first explained it and then read the 8 articles. Whereas, in all bodies laws are necessary for the permanency, safety, and well-being of society, we, the members of the Society of the Daughters of Zion, do agree to regulate ourselves under such laws as, in righteousness, shall be deemed necessary for the preservation of our holy religion, and of our most sacred rights, and the rights of our wives and children. But, to be explicit on the subject, it is especially our object to support and defend the rights conferred on us by our venerable sires, who purchased them with the pledges of their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors. And now, to prove ourselves worthy of the liberty conferred on us by them, in the providence of God, we do agree to be governed by such laws as shall perpetuate these high privileges, of which we know ourselves to be the rightful possessors, and of which privileges wicked and designing men have tried to deprive us by all manner of evil. And that purely in consequence of the tenacity we have manifested in the discharge of our duty towards our God, who has given us those rights and privileges, and a right, in common with others, to dwell on this land. But we, not having the privileges of others allowed unto us, have determined, like unto our fathers, to resist tyranny, whether it be in kings or in the people. It is all alike unto us. Our rights are, first, all power belongs originally and legitimately to the people, and they have a right to dispose of it as they shall deem fit. But, as it is inconvenient and impossible to convene the people in all cases, the legislative powers have been given by them, from time to time, into the hands of a representation composed of delegates from the people themselves. This is and has been the law, both in civil and religious bodies, and is the true principle. Art. 2d. The executive power shall be vested in the president of the whole church and his councillors. Art. 3d. The legislative powers shall reside in the president and his councillors together, and with the generals and colonels of the society. By them all laws shall be made regulating the society. Art. 4th. All offices shall be during life in good behavior, or to be regulated by the law of God. Art. 5th. The society reserves the power of electing all its officers, with the exception of the aides and clerks which the offers may need in their various stations. The nomination to go from the presidency to his second, and from the second to the third in rank, and so down through all the various grades. Each branch or department retains the power of electing its own particular officers. Art. 6th. Punishment shall be administered to the guilty, in accordance to the offense, and no member shall be punished without law, or by any others than those appointed by law for that purpose. The legislature shall have power to make laws regulating punishments, as, in their judgments, shall be wisdom and righteousness. Art. 7th. There shall be a secretary, whose business it shall be to keep all the legislative records of the society, and also to keep a register of the names of every member of the society, also the rank of the officers. He shall also communicate the laws to the generals, as directed by laws made for the regulation of such business by the legislature. Art. 8th. All officers shall be subject to the commands of the Captain General, given through the Secretary of War, and so all officers shall be subject to their superiors in rank, according to laws made for that purpose. Senate Document 189, pages 5 to 6. In his pamphlet Mormonism Exposed, William Swartzell gave an account of a Danite meeting. Some talk of a meeting for what purpose I do not know. It is called a Danite meeting. It was held in a grove, in the woods, adjoining. Just as these things were going on, Brother Higby asked me if I could eat strong meat. I answered him that I could, if the meat had a good scent. The answer deprived me of being then let into the secret, or being admitted to the meeting. Mormonism Exposed, page 17. The oath and covenant of this Danite order according to Avard was as follows. In the name of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, I do solemnly obligate myself ever to conceal, and never to reveal the secrets of this society called the Daughters of Zion. Should I ever do the same, I hold my life as the forfeiture. Senate Document 189, page 2. Swartzell said it was like this. Now I do solemnly swear, by the eternal Jehovah, that I will decree to bear and conceal, and never reveal, this secret, at the peril of committing perjury, and enduring the pains of death, and my body to be shot and laid in the dust. Amen. Mormonism Exposed, page 21. Another part of their oath was certain signs and tokens that were made for mutual protection, by which a fellow Danite might call for help without using his voice. According to John D. Lee, it was after this manner. When the sign was given, it must be responded to and obeyed, even at the risk or certainty of death. That Danite that would refuse to respect the token, and did not comply with its regulations, was stamped with dishonor, infamy, shame, and disgrace, and his fate for cowardice was death. The sign or token of distress is made by placing the right hand on the right side of the face, with the points of the fingers upwards, shoving the hand upwards until the ear is snug up between the thumb and forefinger. Confessions of John D. Lee, page 57. But as in every organization, there are a few who bring discredit upon all. Such was the ultimate end of Dr. Samson of Ard. Through his actions, the Church experienced another disastrous misfortune. Avard began to seize on the opportunity of stealing from the Gentiles for his own personal advantage. He even attempted to use the Danite organization for his force. Said Avard to his company, "Know ye not, brethren, that it soon will be your privilege to take your respective companies and go out on a scout on the borders of the settlements, and take to yourselves spoils of the goods of the ungodly Gentiles? For it is written, the riches of the Gentiles shall be consecrated to my people, the house of Israel, and thus you will waste away the Gentiles by robbing and plundering them of their property, and in this way we will build up the kingdom of God, and roll forth a little stone that Daniel saw cut out of the mountain without hands, and roll forth until it filled the whole earth. For this is the very way that God destines to build up his kingdom in the last days." DHC 3180. Avard's spoils of war speech gained little or no enthusiasm, and it began to forge a new division and dissension among the Mormon people. Prior to this, the prophet said that Avard was smooth, flattering, and winning, which gave him the influence that he gained among the Mormon people. Also by his smiles and flattery, persuaded them to believe it, and proceeded to administer to the few under his control an oath binding them to everlasting secrecy to everything. DHC 3179. Finally, the power he was generating became a toxic stimulus for his ego, and Avard said, "If our enemies swear against us, we can swear also. Why do you startle at this, brethren? As the Lord liveth, I would swear to a lie to clear any of you, and if this would not do, I would put them, the enemy, under the sand as Moses did the Egyptian, and in this way we will consecrate much unto the Lord and build up his kingdom, and who can stand against us? And if any one of this Danite society reveals any of these things, I will put him where the dogs cannot bite him." DHC 3180. Whether anyone was to consider the militia of the Mormons as Danites or by any other name, its organization was legal and, as the prophet said, was for good and righteous purposes. What Avard did was wrong and was denounced by the prophet, therefore that band was short-lived. The organizational militia that Joseph sustained had an honorable objective and mission, and was legal and law-abiding according to the Constitution. Avard had a secretive, well-guarded band that was just the opposite. While the evil spirits were raging up and down in the state to raise mobs against the Mormon, Satan himself was no less busy in striving to stir up mischief in the camp of the saints. And among the most conspicuous of his willing devotees was one Dr. Samson of Ard, who had been in the church but a short time, and so, although he had generally behaved with a tolerable degree of external decorum, was secretly aspiring to be the leader of the people. This was his pride and his folly, and to form a secret combination by which he might rise a mighty conqueror at the expense and overthrow of the church. DHC 3179. The actions of Avard and his band of Danites created much trouble and persecution for the church and its leaders. The two groups, Joseph's and Avard's, were organized, or at least functioned, for two different purposes. One for the defense and protection of the saints and the other for pillage and plunder of all who opposed or denounced the Mormons. Avard protected his members by the threat of severe penalties for revealing any of the Danite secrets. Joseph's militia was open, and with the knowledge and consent of the state. Further differences between Avard's group were clearly evident when the list of the officers of each were named. Reed Peck said that Robinson was a colonel, Dibble a lieutenant colonel, Brunson a major, Carter a captain general, Lott a major general, and Avard a brigadier general. See Reed Peck manuscript. The armies of Israel were reported to have White a commander-in-chief, Brunson a captain, Hinkle a commander-in-chief at Far West, Patton a captain, and Joseph Smith a commander-in-chief of the whole force, according to Avard. However, when George M. Hinkle gave testimony to the judge of the 5th Judicial Circuit in Missouri, he accidentally exposed Avard's lies when he said that the organization of the Danite band took all power out of their hands in the Far West militia. he was exposing the two groups. Pinkel discovered that the Danite band had functions that were different and in some cases superseded the jurisdiction of the local militia. Confusion soon resulted between the militia and the Danites. Enemies of Mormons classified them as one and the same. To prevent this, Joseph made a statement that these companies of 10s and 50s got up by Avard were altogether separate and distinct from those companies of 10s and 50s organized by the Brethren for self-defense in case of attack from the mob. DHC 3181. But the distinction of the two was lessened by the fact that many of the Danites belonged to these armies of Israel camps, and their functions were primarily for the same purpose. Then on November 2, 1838, about this time Samson Avard was formed by the mob secreted in the hazelbrush some miles from far west, and brought into camp, where he and they were hail fellows well met for Avard, told them that Danitism was an order of the church, and by his lying tried to make the church a scapegoat for his sins. DHC 3193. Avard had hundreds of men sworn to secrecy. But when he was caught, he squealed like a pig. Not only was he willing to expose everything that he had been involved in, but he added many colorful and extended lies for his one-time enemies. Avard, of course, tried to save his own skin by saying the Danites and militia were the same, which obviously the enemies of the Mormons wanted to hear. He sold this information to his captors for the promise to go free of the crimes which he had perpetrated. He created a mess and then blamed it on the Mormons. The prophet Joseph warned the saints that Avard had made an evil force out of his organization, and that no one should have any connections with it. Said he, "Let no one hereafter, by mistake or design, confound this organization of the church for good and righteous purposes, with the organization of the Danites of the apostate Avard, which died almost before it had existed." DHC 3182.